What's up, world? I'm kind of mad that I have to re-record this again. So this video is gonna be quicker. It doesn't get any realer than this. Look where I'm at. I'm in the garden. It's beautiful. We got a lot of reds, a lot of yellows, greens, orange, brown. I'm where I belong. So, yeah, the name of this one is gonna be Adam and Eve. Hence us being in the garden. You gotta beware of the snakes out here in this world. This world is real. It doesn't get any realer than this. The sun is beaming on me. I'm glossing, I'm shining. I'm golden like my chain. I'm golden like my watch. So, I hope that everybody started off on the right foot. It's been a minute since I recorded my last pre-recording. It's been about 2 months. So, but I'm back. I just had to recalibrate, had to really let this marinate and think. So, with this video, I'm gonna speak about the beginning of my relationship with my ex. So when I first got to Connecticut, I got situated, got familiar with a lot of faces, and I met her at the gym in Avalon. And she was with a group of friends and I was with my group of friends. But I was nervous to approach her because I didn't want to get played, I didn't want to get played in front of her friends. I didn't know how she would react. I was never afraid to approach a woman, I just didn't know the outcome. Most of us never know the outcome. So I was with a friend, a mutual friend that knew who she was. So I asked him, hey, do you know her? And he said, yeah. So I'm like, can you, put me on, hook me up? So I had him be my wingman, and he did that work for me. He put in the work, and he helped me. And ever since then, her and I have been Bonnie and Clyde, a real ride or die situation. So, yeah. From that point on, we became really tight. And I realized that for the majority of the relationship, we were just familiar. We didn't really get to know each other, So, but it was a great time, a great experience, with a couple of hiccups in the middle of it, a couple of forks in the road, a couple of potholes, and I stepped out of a relationship in the beginning because I first got to Connecticut. I was fresh out there, and me being who I am and being from where I'm from, a lot of women were gravitating towards me, and I wasn't consistent with my partner. So I decided to step out, mess with a couple of girls, and it was one time where I actually got caught. I got caught. I was working at a job, and I met a girl there. She was actually one of my coworkers, and I was at her house one night, and my ex decided to, track me there because she had my location. So she tracked me and she pulled up, and as soon as I got out of the house, she attacked me. So yeah, that threw me off. I didn't even know she was gonna be there. I was caught off guard, and she just started swinging on me, and I'm just defending myself, having my hands up, and it was nothing I couldn't handle. I didn't get bruised or nothing, and I've been through worse. So yeah, that happened, and then it was a situation where she decided to step out, and according to her, she would say that I initiated this behavior. Maybe so, but even if it was, you know, me that started it, she would have done this at some point because we were young. She would have dealt with somebody at some point. So I'm not gonna say I'm the enabler or I'm the catalyst for her making her own choices. You make your own choices at your own discretion. It's something that you want to do. It don't got nothing to do with nobody else. So yeah, she decided to step out. But once again, like in the previous video, I question her character because of her choices. If you're gonna step out with somebody, you should step out with somebody that has no affiliation to anything regarding you or the people that you know. But that's just me being unrealistic because it's always the people that you know. So she decides to, cheat on me with her best friend's boyfriend at the time. So the way I look at that is that's messy behavior because out of all the men in the world, you decide to choose him, and it's not like he's a top 5 dude. It's just like niggas a tusty. See what I'm saying? He ain't sharp. He's not quick. So I'm just not. Once again, it's not for me to understand. So she did that. And I'm like, wow. So that ruined her relationship with her best friends at the time. And if you ask her, she would say that they were never her friends in the first place based off how they treated her. And to a degree, she's correct. Just like when I was young and I was in high school, the people that I hung out with, they weren't my friends. So, it's all learned experience. And to be real, I wouldn't do something like that to my best friends. I had associates that I was around, and then maybe I might talk to their girl. In high school, you're just talking to everybody. But I never did that to my best friends. That's because of the consequences that came with that. We would be fighting and we would really have beef. That's how it was, coming up where I came from. So, it's crazy that she did that. But that's because in Connecticut, what's gonna happen? You see what I'm saying? Not much happens. Not saying nothing happens. Things happen, it's just not really spoken of, And she did that, and it made me question who she was. But she was young, I was young. So, but yeah, I was just more seasoned. She didn't know, and I'm not gonna say she didn't know. I'm just gonna say it's 2 different environments. So there's just things that I'll do and things that I won't do. I have boundaries and I have principles. So she doesn't have that. She's figuring that out now as an adult. But if we want to be honest, completely honest, all of us have a past. All of us have a past where we have skeletons in our closet, and that if we ask a lot of people things that they've done to people that they know, you'll be surprised. It'll be a long list. It'll be like a Christmas list almost, and it'll make you question them. Like, dang, you did all that, and it might make you not want to be associated with them. So I'm not gonna knock her for her past choices because, man, if I start going through my past choices, she's like, and if you watch my previous videos, then you'll see about past choices. So that might make you think like, okay, is he a good person? Overall, I'm a good person, yeah, but I've done some bad things, and I think we all have. Not even that I think I know, we all have. So yeah, she did that, and you know, I tried to get even because of, who I am and my upbringing. I decided like, okay, you want to do that? So I decided I wanted to holler at her best friend. And, that didn't work. She didn't want to mess with me for whatever reason, you know. So, but that was petty of me. I didn't have to do that, but I decided to, you know. And, I'm going to stay on this relationship for a little bit longer. So, yeah, it was those two situations. And I actually seen the guy that she was messing with, her best friend's boyfriend. I seen him one time going to the mall, and while I was there, I approached him and I told him, I'm like, look, now I shouldn't have done that in the first place, but I told him, I'm like, look, man, whatever happened, let that be it, and don't push up no more. Just live your life, and don't push up no more. And he was working at Finish Line, and I decided to brandish a sharp object, and then he went to the stock room and he just ran. And I was just letting him know, I'm like, look, just, don't do it. So, yeah, but that was wrong, because it takes two to tango, as they say. She made that choice. So, yeah. And, that wasn't the only time, I messed around. When you're young, you mess around. There was no barriers. There's no parameters of how, you move. Especially when you're young, you're not thinking about that. You're just living your life. So, that's what that was. And then, as of recent, like I told you from my last video, or maybe the video before that, she was staying with me, and we weren't together as far as being in a relationship. But you staying in my house, we cooking together, we still going out, we doing things. So it's like we were in a relationship without the title. But during that time, like I said, she was messing with some individual, and they were getting way too cozy and getting comfortable. He even, picked her up one time from my apartment complex. And once again, that's crossing boundaries and barriers that you shouldn't, especially if she's staying with me. If she's in her own apartment, then it is what it is. But that's a no-go. You don't do that, because that's a violation of my privacy and my space. So he knew where I lived. Think about that. You see what I'm saying? I don't know what kind of guy this is. He could be a clown. He could be a sucker. So it's like, you just have a random guy that knows where I stay at, and there's no knowing or no telling to who he knows. And you know how men can be, they gossip. They just want to talk about everything, and this, that, and the third. Next thing you know, he knows where I work at. So now if he knows where I stay at, he can know where I work at. You see what I'm saying? And then, he was asking my ex, about me, and it's not like her and I had kids. If we had kids, then it would be understandable to why he's questioning things. But if I'm with a girl and I'm getting to know her, I don't really care about her ex. That's none of my business. Now, if she presents it, I'll listen, but that's not my concern. My concern is who I'm dealing with, like face to face, who's in front of me. You see, like, I'm not thinking about all that extra stuff. It doesn't involve me. But once again, this nigga is nosy, so fucking clown. So, and then she allowed him to pick her up from my house. You see what I'm saying? So, that's crazy to me. From what I know, he wasn't in my house, but, I don't know how true that is. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable being in somebody's house, without permission. But I do know that, based off what she told me, that he wanted to come over. He wanted to see what the inside of my house was like. And it's like, once again, you're crossing boundaries again, you're getting comfortable, So, like I said, if I'm dealing with a woman, I don't want to go to her house knowing that she has another man there. You know, I'd rather go somewhere else. I'd rather go to a hotel, Airbnb, something. You know, if she lives on her own, then okay. But knowing that a man is there, and then you talking about also, you know, you want to meet me, all this funny shit. Like you trying to be funny, like once again, you're not even cut, from the same cloth that I'm cut from. You don't come from where I come from. You haven't been through the extreme experiences that I have been. So you thinking you could, go toe to toe with me, blow to blow with me, it's not happening. It's like, see, you trying to compete with something that you can't compete with. In a sense, it's like, competing with God. I'm not God, but, I just know that I have God knowledge. So with that knowledge, it just, keeps me in alignment with my journey. So it just makes me advance. You don't. That's like fighting a professional boxer. You know that his hands are licensed, and you're gonna mess with him just to pick at him. He's minding his business, and it's always those guys. The professional boxers are the most calmest dudes. They just want to live life. They don't want to hurt anybody. But then you guys want to create situations or put them in predicaments where they have to show you who they really are. So, you see what I'm saying? It's like, if you keep poking the bear, what do you expect the reaction to be? So that's how I was feeling, right? So I'm like, okay, he's doing all this extra. He watching my YouTube, watching my Instagram, or he want to see what I look like. All this extra stuff, all this fun boy stuff. You see what I'm saying? And that's no disrespect to anybody who plays that side of the field. And that's what you do. What I'm saying is, as a grown man, I'm not really worried about another man. I speak to men and we can have great conversation, but I'm not gonna be sitting here thinking like all you got in your mind is, Santana. Like that's crazy to me. So yeah, I'd rather be, fixated on building me. Like I said, that's what I want to do. I just want to build, I want to build something for myself. So yeah, and I just think that that's pretty messed up. But yeah, he said he wanted to see me, and well, he got what he asked for, and that's why you have to be careful what you ask for. My ex and I were still having dealings as far as communication, and the night before she called me, and she would always call me. When she was out of my house, I left it at that. I'm like, I'm not gonna call you. You doing your own thing now. You still dealing with this guy? Yeah, do you? Not saying that I hate her. I'm just like, okay, you're moving on. I'm moving on. That's what it is. That's what you said you wanted to do. So I fell back. I wasn't calling her nothing. I'm living my life. I'm doing me. So, she called me the night before. I'm like, okay, that must be an indicator that she would like to see me. So the next day, I was on patrol doing security, driving around in her area because, that was my job. I actually had to be in the area. So I'm like, shit, I'm nearby. Let me call her and, just check up on her. We could just have a little conversation or something. So I call her and she didn't answer. I'm like, oh, she's probably busy, or she probably with whoever. So I took it upon myself to still show up to her address uninvited, but I felt like I still could be there because once again I helped her get the apartment. My name's on the lease, so technically it's my house. So that was the mindset, me showing up. I didn't care if we were together. I was just like, nah, I'm gonna show up, even though she wouldn't do that to me. But I'm like, I'm gonna show up because my name's on this lease, and as a man, I have a tendency to be aggressive. And then also with the paperwork, I had the authority to be there. So she had somebody over there. I went over there and I went downstairs. There's 2 entrances. And I went through the back door and I heard music playing. So I'm like, oh, they about to get it on. Okay, cool. So I hear the music playing. There's some J. Cole song, some love song. I'm like, all right, cool. So I waited it out a little bit. I'm like, let me see if somebody's gonna come out. So, they just getting started. So he ain't leaving. He probably gonna be there for a couple hours. I'm on the clock. So I don't have, the time to just be sitting here. So I decided to knock on the door. I'm at the back door. I knock, 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 knock. You know, everything stops, and I hear him talking in the background. But I'm not saying anything. I'm like, okay, you know, because I mean, I'm not gonna be doing all that yelling, all that back and forth. I'm not, nah. Once again, me being who I am and where I come from, you know, it's like a soldier. A soldier in war, his instincts just kick in. So what am I talking about? What am I really talking about? You say you want to meet me and you trying to play funny and doing all these disrespectful things. Like you want to tiptoe. You see what I'm saying? You want to tiptoe around, the bush. You know, I come headstrong with everything that I do. And like I said, I don't look for problems. But if you ask for it, you ask for it, and he asked for it. But you know, he wasn't being respectful as far as him wanting to know this and know that, and then also trying to impede and get into my house and all that stuff. Like, see, like, you already tried crossing boundaries, so nah. So now it's like when I see you, then that's what it is. So I mean, he probably knew that because he didn't come through the back door, and I was going back and forth to see who would come out the front. So he's just looking through the window and stuff, seeing where I'm at. So I stayed at the back door, and then he went to the front or whatever, and he left. And then I had a conversation with her afterwards, and she wasn't happy about what I did, and I told her, yeah, I'm wrong for that or whatever. But he asked for that, and yeah, I couldn't see him. I couldn't. I'm not gonna sit there and have a mature conversation with you. Nah. You already crossed. You already crossed me. So yeah, and if I would have seen him, I definitely would have escalated the situation. Because like I said, of course I have experience as far as being physical and fighting and all that good stuff. But nah, I'm older now, so I'm not fighting anybody. So I'm just like, okay. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't arguing. I'm like, dang, you want to see me? Then if he would have stopped out, he would have been done. I didn't care what time of the day it was, and if I was willing to take it there, of course I had a plan. I always plan. So yeah, but that was dead wrong. No, I was dead wrong, and I told her, yeah, I'm wrong for that. But I'm not sorry. I'll never be sorry for what I did. And I told her, yes, this is who I am. It's not all of who I am. It's just a part of me, and you don't let go of what protects you. That's how I feel. You can't let go of everything that raised you. I can't just be weak. We all need some type of defensive mindset. It's important, and not just for men, women too. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I was wrong for that. And then I'm trying to think of what else happened. So there was a situation where my power went out, and she's in her apartment and all that stuff. I'm in mine, but my power went out because the apartment complex decided they just wanted to shut it off, whatever, or it might have been a bad storm, whatever. There was so many things wrong with that apartment complex, and I left. So it's gonna be a video of me in my new spot, and it's gonna be a tour, and you get to see everything. But that'll come later. Y'all gonna get the these meat and potatoes first. That's what y'all gonna get, and then y'all get all the glossy bullshit later. But yeah, so my power went out, and I reached out. I'm like, yo, my power went out. I need somewhere to go, charge my stuff. Even though it was fine, I had a power outage being in the Bronx, and I had to stay at somebody's house, or I stayed in my house for a couple hours, maybe a day or two. It's been nights like that. Winter too, I've been through that. But I'm like, nah, we supposed to be here for each other. F us not being together, but us being there for each other. So I called her, no answer. I text her, no answer. I pull up to her spot, and this is before that situation. I pull up to her spot, she's not there. So I'm like, okay. And then she finally answers, and she's with homeboy, the guy she was dealing with once again. So I'm like, look, obviously, you're in this little relationship, and it's like, I get that, and you don't have to, answer to my, call, but it's deeper than that. You see what I'm saying? I'm not just looking at it as us not together. I thought we was cool. To see if my partner and my friend was going through something, I would be there, because that's who I am. So I'm like, okay, so now she's just showing who she really is. She basically said that she didn't care without saying that. You know, if I had to suffer, I had to suffer. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, it lets me know what it really is. You know, so I'm like, okay, cool. You know, but women, you know, have the tendency to sway back and forth. They're not, grounded like how I am right here. You know, they're not grounded. You know, they just feel things out, and they feel like it's not working, then they move on. You know, they're not vocal about how they feel most of the time. Certain women are though, so this isn't just a generalization of women overall. It's just, you know, how I see things. You know, this is my opinion. It's not facts, but I feel like I'm accurate. So, yeah. So, that was crazy to me. It's like, I was already going through what I was going through, and that's going to be in another video. I explain in detail of everything I was going through. And then on top of her, you know, doing what she was doing, even though we weren't together, it was just pressure, unnecessary pressure that I didn't have to go through. And I was happy that we did separate because now I have my space and my clarity. I could think properly, but yeah, you know, yeah, I've done things too. Like, I messed with girls that were in relationships with men, and I guess that's my karma. See, like, you know, and sometimes with people that I did know, but they weren't my best friends. Like, they weren't people that were super close. It might have been somebody I just ran into or seen here and there. Yeah, I've been in situations where that happened. But, everything that you put out there, is full circle, like I said, you know. So, hey, now that I'm older, that's when shit happens. But, you have a lot of life to live. We all do. So, yeah. Um, so, I'm trying to think. So I spoke about the relationship. Oh yeah, I want to get back to the uncle again. So her uncle, like I said, he wanted to be attached to things that he really wasn't. So he was a imitator, and he would like to reenact and act, a way that he really wasn't. And like I said, he knew the person that did what they did to me. You know, like I can't guarantee that he knew that it was gonna happen, or if he had a hand in it, but he knew who it was. And that's a lot already. So, with that being said, in that situation, if he was real, he could have been like, "Yeah, yo, I know who did that. If you wanna, take it upon yourself, or work together, or yo, I'll help you." But no, that's not the response I got. You know, and when I got cut, he was one of the first people that I actually seen, like maybe 2 3 weeks afterwards. You know, so he probably did have a hand in it. And then if you did backdoor me, you didn't win because look, you know, I'm still here and I'm surviving, and I'm stronger than you. In multiple ways. I don't even think he can read a sentence. Yeah, I would say he can't read a paragraph, but I don't think he could read a sentence. And then he's been in and out of jail. He can't even serve a full sentence. So I mean, once again, you keep telling on people. So it's like, even if I want to be like, yo, I know that, you have an association to what happened to me, and I'm like, okay, I want to handle it in this fashion. I can't do it. You see, I can't even handle it in this fashion, like how I would usually do it because, you know, you're the police. So it's like, I can't even do anything with you. I just have to let you, just wither away. And that's what it is. I'm just gonna continue to grow, handle my business. I'm really past that. But it's just crazy to think that, he was close to the situation and he didn't help me. And I've helped him in a lot of situations, you know. So, that's wild. And I kind of hate that I found out all this information later, because if I knew then, you see, I would have just, took care of it. And you know, that's just wild, And what I should have did, I should have took him to the Bronx. He would have fell for it. I'd be like, man, let's go to the Bronx. Since you're such a lover of New York, and you're so New York festive, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, man, let me take you to the Bronx. Let me show you my neighborhood. Man, the dudes I was raised around, they would have looked at him and be like, yo, is he free? Like, that's how they would have looked at him. Like, yo, is he free? Because he was, trying to associate himself with an organization, being blood. That's what he wanted to be. He was trying to be something that he wasn't. And I was actually around that stuff. So, the people I was around, they would have checked him and they would have flipped him. And then him doing what he might have had something to do, like I said, I can't guarantee it, but he was too close to the situation. So he would have been like, man, yo, they would have just flipped him, no questions. And they would have had a good time doing it. And they would have went home like nothing happened. So, yeah, and he wouldn't have went back to Connecticut. He would have stayed there. So if I would have brought him to the Bronx, he would have stayed there. He would have never went back. And that's the cleanest way I can say it. I'm not gonna, get too dirty. Even though I have the potential to do that. So, but yeah, I also have a philosophy where, life is short, but life is long, and here's why. Life is short because every day just goes by quick. And then I also broke it down into months. If you look at life in 800 months, that's like a good, 70 to 80 years. So that's what most people have. I know I have a little longer than that because I keep myself in shape. Or if you start looking at things month by month and you start thinking about all the things that you're doing in these months, if you haven't done anything, that you cannot grow. So I feel like everybody should really reevaluate and, devise and just conduct a plan in order to live and still have fun, still keep it light, So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about that situation. And like I said, there's gonna be a video where I do a little tour of my new house and everything else. And I have a lot more videos coming along the way, and where I get into detail about these stories. So, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. It's getting nice out. It's beautiful out here. So, I hope your house is clean, spring cleaning. I hope you don't have a dirty house. It's getting muggy out here. So, keep yourself clean, keep your house clean, keep everything clean. Yeah. Peace out.